here at Southern California Soaring Academy, where I'm about to fly in a glider plane with hand controls. This place is located about an hour and a half away from Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and Palm Springs. So there's not much around here, but open space to soar. So there's some mountains behind me, and that's usually the playground for these glider planes. But yesterday there was a fire in the park, and as you can see, visibility is pretty hazy. So we're not going to get to play in the mountains quite as much, but regardless, I know I'm going to have an amazing time flying a glider plane.
In powerless flight, I'm going to mention one thing I didn't mention earlier. There are two fundamental principles that are not in the books that I think are the key to thinking about powerless flight. If you're flying along in the plane and your attitude is changed in any way by the atmosphere, it's always an updraft pushing you away into a downdraft. So anything you feel or anything you experience in the plane, if it is counter to what you're trying to achieve, if you're going straight and suddenly the plane isn't, you resist everything the air does, or the air will push you into a downdraft. And so by resisting that, it's like a dog following a scent, and you can fly right into the updraft, even if you don't see where it is, by following all that pressure. That's one principle. And another is, in gliding flight, there's a perfect speed for the optimum performance in still air. But if the air starts to drop and you're sinking, you will get a flatter glide by lowering the nose and flying faster through the downdraft. You'll actually get better performance, and meanwhile you're conserving inertia that you can use to zoom back up in the updrafts. So while you're resisting all these things the air does, if it's a downdraft, you dive into it, and if it's an updraft, you pull up and try to loiter in it. Those are the two principles that other aircraft just don't bother with. Then the forms of updraft come in basically four categories, and the thermal is the meat and potatoes of soaring everywhere around the world. It's wherever the ground is warmer in one place than another, for whatever reasons, just a sunny patch of ground rather than surrounded by shade, or it could be a rock quarry surrounded by forest, or just a slope facing the sun where everything else is not. Any of these reasons would be enough to cause a thermal. Well, the thermal is where the ground warms the air, and then the air just bubbles up because it's expanding. And in the thermal, we generally circle to stay in the thermal. And it can be very challenging, but often thermals grow with altitude, and when you're high up, it's usually very easy because the thermal is so wide. Another category of lift is upslope winds, where you're flying along parallel to a ridge or any slope. And it can be hazardous if you don't do it right, but it's very simple. And if the ridge runs for hundreds of miles like the Appalachians, you can do that. They've flown gliders at low altitude from Pennsylvania to Georgia and back on low ridges. The next category is wave, where the whole atmosphere flows over a mountain and descends and then back up again. And that's, in wave, is how we can soar to very great heights. No one has yet topped out in the biggest wave phenomena. The people who set records have stopped climbing to survive, not because there wasn't more rising air. And then the fourth category is an entire family of merging winds, whether it's two different atmospheres like we often have here, or just one wind blowing around a mountain and then reconverging. If you have air molecules going together, one of them is going to go up and maybe both will. So those are the categories of updraft we work with, and different technique for each. And usually, often anyway, it's a combination of more than one of these. portion of the flight is to reconnoiter and just try to discover what is the air doing. When we're clear, you can see the Channel Islands, Catalina, out there over the ocean. This is the safest place in the world, especially the higher we go. And now we've come up nearly 1,000 feet.
So you said this is the San Andreas Fault right here?
Right where that paved road is. In fact, just beyond one of the curves down there, you can see just a green trench in the trees. Okay, yeah, here we're gonna go.
All right. Yeah, woo! Woo!
Make sure your shoulder straps are snug. So now in miles an hour, we're doing about 100.
100 miles an hour. Woo!
And we just got back more altitude than we spent. We're higher than we were before the dive.
That was fun.
Now I'm going to dive again, but I will pull up eventually.
There goes Birdie.
Well, when you see birds, you know you're in the updrafts. If you see a hawk or an eagle, you know you're in the best updraft for miles. So now we're approaching 9,000 feet. We've come up about a quarter mile. There's a hiker down there, a couple people waving, down on the right. You want to try it?
Yeah.
Okay, you fly it.
Okay.
Now look down ahead. There's the airport straight ahead, about 5 miles, straight ahead. You have control, but just resist everything the air does. And it's still pretty active here. It's going to push you all around, and it's going to make you feel like a cork on the ocean. And eventually, gradually, you gain mastery of that. So you just resist everything, and it works. So, you got it.
Driving an airplane.
Now if life keeps asking you the same question, you ain't learning the lesson. Now if life keeps asking you the same question, you ain't learning the lesson. Now if life keeps asking you the same question,